Good evening. Welcome to the Cheese Room podcast because you're waiting for me to get out the shower and waiting for some guests to arrive because it's just me and Jack at the moment. Other American Jack is also trying to get on, but he's got a storm rolling through where he lives and his Wi-Fi is a little bit patchy. So sorry, you're going to have to put up with the two of us, but it's a pleasure to be back here on the Cheese Room tonight. Jack, how are you, sir? We were just describing the virtues of American craft ale versus British craft ale. Let us know what you think about that subject in the chat. But Jack, you okay? What are you drinking tonight? You got something good?
I'm okay. I'm actually gone very Yank with the choice that I've decided with. I've gone back to my roots when I did live in Texas for a year or two. I've gone for a Lone Star. Now, a Lone Star is what Matthew McConaughey drank in if you did watch, what was it called? True Detective, season 1.
I did.
Yeah, that was the cans that he was like carving up, and turning into the little men. That was Lone Star.
That was basically the only series of True Detective that I thought was worth watching, actually. But
I agree. I think that's kind of the commonly held opinion. I think the third season maybe wasn't as bad, but yeah, I mostly agree with that. But I would say at the moment, the craft beer of America can compete with maybe the craft beer of the UK, but certainly not the cheap stuff. I think the cheap stuff that the UK has absolutely just hands down is far better, no competition. And I do like to intermix between, the cheap beer as well as kind of the more expensive thing, like to treat myself occasionally and also like to be strict with myself. And it's also nice, by the way, caller, to be talking about something other else than garnishes. We've diversified.
We have diversified from garnish to beer. It's good. Jack H, you got your internet working. You're live and direct. Are you okay? Oh, is that a delay or can you hear me, Jack? No, I don't think he can hear me.
No.
Okay. Can't hear you.
It's a little dodgy.
Oh, there he is. Can you hear me, Jack? No.
Yeah, it's a little dodgy still.
I think we can.
Almost getting there, though.
Almost getting there. He's gone. We've got a packed show tonight, as always. Make sure you do smash that like button. And if you're not already subscribed, what are you doing? You're missing the garnish conversations, beer conversations. And we do talk about Spurs a little bit as well. And we like to think we know what we're talking about. There's a international break, which does give us the virtue. We can talk about beers. We can talk about snacks tonight. I've got some lovely pork scratchings on the go. Mr. Porky is here with me in the man cave. And we can talk about Eric Dier taking his concerns to Daniel Levy, Jack, which is the first thing I've got on my run sheet. I mean, what is that all about? So just imagine you're Ange Postecoglou, and your office is obviously, you've seen in All or Nothing. You've got a nice big glass office, and you see Eric, the meathead Dier, walking past with his mohawk, looking very angry, seeking out Dan COYS. What's going on there?
Yeah, you wonder if he sharpened the mohawk, lined it up even more, ahead of the meeting just to intimidate Mr. Ange or Daniel in this negotiation. I find it pretty triggering. I find it pretty infuriating. I do feel like I can't tell whether Dier is just playing dumb or he just can't really take the hint right now. Ange obviously doesn't want him around. Spurs, for the most part, don't really want him around. They haven't given him that new contract that at some stage it looked like he was going to get. They've rescinded maybe that offer, or at least, it hasn't really been put on the table. And just made it very clear that he doesn't really want him around. Pretty much the majority of the Spurs fan base, at least according to Twitter, would probably say that they don't want him around. And he's, I guess, trying to block out all the noise and, pretend that none of that's really happening. And he's, also ignoring, I guess, all the hints that Ange are giving him right now. It also could be the case that it is international break and maybe this is being spun a certain way to make Eric Dier look bad, or because believe me, I love it. In the case of Eric Dier looking bad, I want him out of the club as soon as possible. But I am also curious, like if there's sort of, over international break, if there's sort of a way of spinning this that Eric Dier is the one that summoned the meeting. It could have been the case that Daniel Levy, right, was the one that summoned the meeting. And then if that were the situation, that you kind of read that a bit differently, right? Because that's Daniel Levy trying to figure out Eric Dier's future for Eric Dier instead of Eric Dier trying to figure out his future, on his own. So you could read it, I think, a few different ways. If you were to read it that Eric Dier has somehow summoned this meeting, it does give you a lot of reminders of Danny Rose.
Well, yeah, I'm going to see Daniel. I mean, that was pretty epic, wasn't it? In the All or Nothing, I thought that was, as most people thought, it's probably the highlight of the series. And it's just like, do you think he took some advice from Danny Rose before he went to see Daniel? I mean, seriously though, what's Daniel Levy going to say? Look, Ange Postecoglou is the manager. Why would I intervene and say, oh, you need to put Eric on the bench? That's not right, is it?
I mean, I feel like it's very upset driver, and it's also thunder outside. I feel like Daniel Levy, I mean, he can't in any way like sympathize with Dier, right? He can't, because Ange is doing well. He's just hired Ange. He's also given him a big contract, a much longer contract than he's given the previous managers. In no way can Eric Dier just somehow try to go, underneath him or, behind his back in any sort of way. And Daniel Levy pretend to be sympathetic to it all. There is also, a history of this, though. I mean, when Nuno got sacked, we do know that some players sort of went up to Daniel's office and, kind of presented him, this whatever, sort of manifesto that there are a bunch of players that don't really like Nuno anymore. And we want him out. And that's sort of what happened after the Man United game. And it could be the case that Dier is trying to do this in maybe a one-man army type situation. But I don't know, it's hard to tell, if it's really Dier actually going about it in this sort of Danny Rose type fashion, because if he really is playing dumb. He really can't take the hint. And he's also being very stubborn and being very, I don't know, he's holding the club back. And it's just hard to know. I don't want to say too much, without knowing, the real situation. But if he is going about it this sort of way, I find it funny that somebody who wants to bury his ashes in the Spurs ground is sort of holding back the club.
I missed that.
Such a situation.
Didn't say that. I want to bury my ashes at the stadium.
I think it's come through some sort of quotes, either through maybe that documentary in the Amazon.
Because I get a bit confused.
Family members. I forget how that originated.
See, I think it's been misread. I think what he actually said was, "I want to bury my ashes at the allotment," because that's where where the thing he loves most about Spurs, right? Look, I don't get the dire hatred, if I'm honest, from people. He's done a good job for Spurs over the years. Yes, he's made some mistakes. Lots of players make mistakes, but he's served the club diligently, done everything. He's always done his best. He's never disrespected the badge. So I do find the blind hatred for our players a little bit tough, a bit like booing Davinson Sanchez off the pitch. I think the fans were just very frustrated, and obviously Sanchez makes a couple of cock-ups, but it's not helpful.
Could I throw something, kind of interesting in
here? Throw it.
Alistair Gold had a quote that came out this summer, and this is when he was interviewing Eric Dier in the preseason tour. Eric Dier said that he thinks his best years as a defender are ahead of him because he's seen the likes of Vertonghen, Toby Alderweireld. He mentioned in particular players that had some of their best ever years, around 29, 30, 31. So if Dier really believes that his best years are ahead of him, why on earth is he deciding just to sit on the bench, for the remainder of the season and leave on a free, so he can get a bunch of money or whatever it may be? If he's rejecting all these moves that are coming his way when it's being made clear to him that he's not wanted anymore. If he really thought his best years were ahead of him, surely he would take one of these moves, right?
I don't think it's about not being wanted. I think it's about he doesn't fit into a system. Dier operates best in a three, doesn't he? Either in the centre or on the right. And he has got leadership qualities that every Spurs manager has liked. Mourinho, Conte both spoke very highly of Eric Dier, as did Poch. So, I don't want to see Dier in a Spurs shirt again, but I do think the disrespect is poor. and I think people need to get a little bit of a grip, really.
I have refrained from calling him Moonhead this whole time until just now.
I think the thing is with Dier that we know he's a very limited player, and he just couldn't play a high line defence because he's not quick enough. That's the fundamental of it. He's got the turning circle of the QE2. So the fact that he thinks he can hang around and play, but again, I think people getting on his back for like seeing out the last year of his contract and then getting the move he wants. That's probably sensible for Dier because he's going to get more offers on the table if he's a free agent, isn't he? So we view it from the Spurs perspective of move him on, he's deadwood, get a fee from him if you can, and let's reinvest the money. But from a player's perspective, isn't it more about, well, I'm going to do what's right for me and my family, actually? Wouldn't that's what, in your employment, Jack, isn't that what you would do?
Sure, I think that argument's always valid, but Eric Dier has always had the opposite sort of reputation. He's had the reputation of being a very selfless person. He's had the reputation of being a leader. He's had the reputation of being a guy that really only cares about his football, doesn't really care about much else, is a guy that everybody gets along with. A guy is, sort of seen as one of the, players that, while not being from the Spurs Academy, supposedly really loves and would die for the badge, etc. Sort of cliches. So the way he's sort of going about it right now, I think would suggest the opposite. Maybe he's being a bit petulant. He's being a bit...
Well, hang on. I need to pull you up there. Is it petulant to turn down a move when you don't want to go somewhere because you want to keep your options open at the end of the season?
I think it's petulant if you've been here 8 or 9 years, and especially in your last season, you really didn't put in a great season, and you have been shown the door. Just quickly though, you have been shown the door by 2 people. You've been shown the door by Daniel, and you've been shown the door by Ange Postecoglou. If you want to hold the club for ransom and hold the club hostage just to suit your own benefit, you're welcome to do that. You do have the power. He does have the power in this situation, but at the end of the day, he is being presented moves, away from the club, and if he's not getting his moves that he desires, that more speaks to his own ability. That more speaks to him, not being good enough to get the moves that he wants. And yes, he could wait till he leaves on a free. He might actually get that move that he wants. But at the end of the day, he's holding the club hostage from us being able to invest further and bringing in a center back.
He's not though, is he? Because the club goes.
No, I think we struggled to be able to sign players, or not sign players. We struggled to be able to register players, if I'm not mistaken. Because we had so many players that refused to leave this summer.
Correct.
And Dier's one of them. Dier's the most guilty of it.
But he's not guilty of anything apart from holding the club to their end of the deal, is he?
Well, yeah, because he's holding the club back. Jack. He is holding the club back, technically.
If you were in his situation, and ask yourself this if you're watching this, and let me know what you think in the chat. If you were in his situation, would you not do exactly the same as Eric Dier has done?
If I didn't care about my football.
Hang on. Caveat: there's a move to Fulham on the table, maybe. Yeah, for example. There's a move, I don't know, to flipping Burnley or something like that. Supposing those are the
Nottingham Forest.
Yeah, supposing those are the moves on the table. So probably not where he sees himself. Maybe where we see him, not where he sees himself. There you go. Would you do that? Would you be willing to do that? I'm going to add Jack in on the optimistic basis that you can hear me now. Can you hear me, Jack?
I can hear you.
Yes!
Get in there.
America, you sorted your Wi-Fi.
Join the air.
I don't know. It's every application works. Everything works except for StreamYard, it seems like.
Oh, there we go. You're just going to have to buy a new laptop. We're talking about Dier, Jack, and my view is I don't want him at the club particularly because I don't see how he's going to fit into Ange's system. But I can see why Dier would run down that last year of his deal to do what's right for Dier. And as John puts it here, it'll be his last big contract, which is right. Jack, is he guilty of being, Jack H, I should say, is he guilty of being selfish and not putting the club first and scum? Or is it a case of Dier's just looking after himself and his family?
I don't think he's being selfish by looking after himself and his family. I think that it's his right to run down his contract. I don't see anything being selfish. I mean, he's been a good servant to the club. Not everyone loves him, but I don't see that as a problem in running down his contract. He doesn't owe the club to move just so they can free up a spot. You know, it'd be great for us fans, but I don't see it's his responsibility. I'm just surprised that he's willing to not play potentially for a whole year, given that Southgate might still be willing to take him on the squad. I mean, I think if he were playing somewhere regularly and showing that he had something to offer the England squad, he might get on the plane. But I don't see it as being disloyal or anything to the club. It's his right to run it down if he wants, and maybe he'll get a decent move that last contract. But if he's not playing, he's not going to get much of a move. Not going to get a big contract with anyone else if he's not playing.
That's a good point.
I agree with everything you just said, really.
That was the point I was even going to make, was yes, like your argument's completely valid, caller, and I would say I would never, I would never disregard that argument, but based on Dier's quotes that he thinks his best years are ahead of him and he wants to get back into the England team and all these sort of,
But you're going to say that.
Well, then that means he didn't mean what he was saying. So that's all I mean, is that means he didn't actually mean what he was saying. Where some players, they do say that. Some players, they do say that, and they do mean what they're saying. And then they would have taken that move to Fulham, or they would have taken that move or whatever. And so, I mean, it's just whether he meant those quotes or not. And I guess he didn't, I think. And I think Jack probably put it in a better point than I did. If he really cared about getting into the England team, like you said he did, then he would take that move, but he isn't.
I'm not sure about that. Oh, thanks, John. That's really kind. Yeah, a bit slimmer. Yeah, about a stone lighter since last you saw me. So there you go.
That's true. You are.
Well, I'm working on about 2. I need to get another 2 stone off. So watch this space. Scott Munn.
What's a
big deadline day news. It's deadline day somewhere, right? With so many countries playing soccer these days. Starts the 22nd of the 9th. You've written it the wrong way around, Jack. We do our dates the other way around over here, which is the
Sorry,
right
I was
way.
in a hurry.
Which is the right way, obviously, because we probably.
Of course it is. Of course it is. No, I don't question that.
Director of football, Scott Munn. Lots of people ranting and frothing about this one, moaning that he hasn't started yet. Jack, let's go Jack rather than Jack H first. I'll come to you in a sec, Jack H. Are you excited about it?
Sort of. Sorry, remind me of the question again. I feel like I lost my train of thought for a second there.
Are you excited about Scott Munn starting?
Scott Munn, yeah. Sorry. I was thinking about the loss of Paratici, and I am hopeful that he's going to remain around. And Scott Munn,
minor correction. He's not DOF. He's CFO.
CFO, correct. Yeah. Is it appropriate that I call him the new Don, or is that not something that you can give, an Aussie? Can you not give an Aussie the Don title?
I think it would be disrespectful when Paratici is probably still consulting.
I feel like with Scott Munn, I don't know if I have an exceptionally strong opinion on him, other than it's been funny that it's taken this long for him to really get into this official capacity. He's been successful with the City Group in whatever role that we're not really all that familiar with. He seems to be more kind of hands-on on things away from really just the signing of players. He seems to be more of a bird's eye view sort of kind of guy that's going to be handling a lot of things at once, trying to maybe just sort of perhaps, I don't know, shaping up, a lot of the different departments and get them to sort of be more intertwined and kind of, on the same page, have there be more cohesion and transparency, all those sort of good words, for a company that you want to hear. So I think that's what Scott Munn is, I think, being brought in to do. I feel like he'll do a fine job. He seems to have a pretty good sort of track record. We don't know all that much about him when it comes to his actual side of the footballing matters, but he seems to have been successful wherever he's gone. Sorry, I don't have an exceptional opinion on him or a strong.
I mean, it's difficult to have an opinion on someone absolutely scrot all about, isn't it? Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Jack H, do you have anything to add on it? I mean,
yeah, the only thing I'll say is I have hope. I don't know a lot about Scott Munn because nobody really does. I'd like to know the story as to why his start was delayed so much and whether or not it has anything to do with City being so annoyed with Daniel Levy pushing the financial fair play rules and all the I assume that's what it has something to do with, and they're just putting one back to him. But what I'm hoping is that Scott Munn is a person who has enough authority and respect with Levy and the board to get them out of managing the transfer business. That I'd like to see this notion of, okay, the board says, all right, you got 150 mil, you got 175 mil, you got 125 million, you got 250, whatever it is, that's your budget. That's what you got to work with. You make it work, and we'll hold you accountable to the results. Because I think most Spurs fans would like to see Levy further away from negotiating transfers. Whether that's right or wrong,
is that realistic though, Jack? Is that realistic?
Well, you hope Scott's that guy. He's right.
I said it was a hope that if you have Scott Munn and a director of football and a manager you trust, that they'll release the purse strings as to whatever that number is, big or small, and then they'll just walk away and deal with their development and the running of the whole organization, and leave the football operations to football people. That's kind of what a lot of us hope. Whether or not that really happens, I think that's past track record suggests it won't. But I'd say there's an argument that he's been wanting to do that, and that was where Paratici was supposed to come in and kind of take over that role, someone he trusted who could do those things. Whether or not it really does, it really materializes, who knows? Levy's fingerprints seem to be over everything all the time.
But he's the CEO or the chairman, the chairman of Tottenham Hotspur, basically the CEO. I mean, he's always going to be involved. Like, it's deluded to think that the chairman of other clubs sign off all the checks. Like, I mean, I'm not defending him because I think he's made some shocking decisions over the last 5, certainly since Pochettino went. But it's deluded to think that he's not going to be involved, isn't it, Jack?
Perhaps, but that's why we're Spurs fans. But also, I think technically Ali Gold did say that Paratici did have more of a voice than previous people did within, sort of the hierarchy, that actually Levy listened to him, and Paratici was able to sort of call Levy out when he felt like he was wrong, which was supposedly not something that happens very often because people are afraid to do it. It could be the case that Scott
Did he
Munn,
march down the high road while he was doing
hopeful.
it with a banner?
Say that again.
Did he march down the high road calling Levy out when he was doing it? Yeah,
Paratici was. I mean, I think Paratici actually, in a way, was supposed to be Levy's sort of like, how would you, almost like his anger translator or something like that, where he's able to sort of do what he wants when it comes to negotiating it down to as low of a fee as possible, but still be able to get it done in a manner that Levy can't, because Paratici had all these connections.
That's what he was good at, though, right? That's what he was good at generally at Juve and other clubs.
Right, and I think that's why Levy liked him in the first place. I'm just hopeful, this is being delusionally hopeful, that Scott Munn is similar. Maybe there's something that Levy sees in him that allows Levy to actually grant some sort of trust, some sort of, offloading of some of the responsibilities and some of the oversight of all the transfers in that department in general. If he trusted a Paratici to do it, like he, maybe didn't a Hitchin, then you hope that Scott Munn is similar, that he sort of trusts him to be able to do things that normally Levy would take full hands-on control of. I think Levy will always be involved, but just hope that Scott Munn is coming in to take some of the things that Levy would take control of previously, and he's going to be doing it instead. And that means Levy just has less of a handprint over everything and less of a fingerprint over everything.
Or it's more disguised, more likely. But my question to both of you, do we bring in a DOF as well? I don't see it happening. I really don't see it happening. I think Ange has already said he wants the last word on transfers. These are all these players that are coming in now. I don't see where a DOF fits in, who would report to Scott Munn, but equally Ange technically reports into Scott Munn as well, doesn't he? So, Jack H, do we need a DOF?
I would like to see a DOF, and maybe I'm misinformed. I thought I recall reading that we were expecting an appointment of a DOF as soon as shortly after Scott Munn was officially on the job, that there would be an incoming DOF. I might have misread that, but that's what I thought I saw somewhere, and I just can't tell you the source. I mean, I I think a modern football club the size of Tottenham Hotspur with a thriving academy, a women's team, and a men's team who's hoping to compete for, top honors, they need a professional, whatever you call the person whose primary job is to run the scouting network and to negotiate deals that the manager is needing to find, the players that the manager needs. So I even thought I heard and say he needs final say of players coming in. There is no club signings in his world. But I thought he was even in favor of having someone that he would work with so that would relieve the responsibility so he could focus on coaching and not all about finding the players to fill a squad out.
I think you're on mute, caller.
Do you feel the same, Jack? Do you need a DOF, or are we just waiting for Paratici's football ban to be lifted? How long's that?
Yeah, how long is that?
2 years or something?
Not as long as I think we might. You would think with how serious the allegations were that it would be a very, very long time, but I don't think it actually is a very long time.
No,
I am under the suspicion that Levy does just want to keep Paratici as the director of football. We knew that he courted him for a very long time when he was at Juventus. He always wanted him. And technically what he did wrong was never at Spurs. It was actually at Juventus, right? And since he's been at Spurs, he's lowered the squad age. He's been able to pretty much form this starting 11 that we're looking at right now. A majority of them have been Paratici-influenced signings. He's also been able to get rid of the deadwood, I think, better when he was in charge than we were this season. I think this season we struggled with it, whereas when Paratici had it, I think he did a slightly better job. And then two, we have a much better youth department since he's come in. The youth department's been exceptional since his arrival. We have far better players in that area. We have probably one of the most now talented academies to choose from and to pick from. And the majority of that England under 21, under 19 setup is chock full of Spurs players. And you also have to just look at how they're performing right now. They're pretty much just destroying every team that comes in front of them right now, that under 21 and under 18 setup. So that's all due to Paratici and the guys that he brought in. That, of course, isn't all him, but some of the guys that he brought and hired, the multiple signings or multiple hirings that he made since he came in here, beefed up the youth department. So he's not done a perfect job. There are plenty of things he's done wrong, but he has lowered the squad age. He's pretty much formed this starting 11 that we look at right now. And the golden generation of players that we have in our academy have all been kept around or either brought in, in his tutelage. So I hope that he's kept in as director of football. I mean, if we get a new one, I'll give the new guy trust and, of course, call him the Don as well. But I just feel like Paratici, hasn't done all that bad of a job that maybe we can just get away with this consultancy sort of thing,
Is it fair to say you're a Paratici fan, Jack?
I've been labeled the Paratici twin alongside the other Dave Harris, and I'm a proud member of his propaganda and PR team.
Okay.
Well, it's a 30-month ban.
Are you on the
full-time
payroll
job
as well? Are you on the payroll as well?
Maybe one of these days, one of the maybe Pape Matar bonuses or something like that might come my way. Who knows?
Fair enough. Well, I'm dry. I need a beer. I've been working out a lot. I need it's treat night. There's pork scratchings. There's beer. It's a wonderful world. So I'm gonna get you two to discuss the virtues of Paratici, according to David Harris, who is trolling from Australia of all places.
Would you rather it be someone else than Paratici, Jack H? Or would you?
There you go.
Well,
I'll let you two discuss this.
Yes,
have we wasted a lot of money on his watch?
Right. David, God love him, loves to cherry pick data to serve his purposes sometimes. And I think this is an example. I mean, you can also talk about all the successes. I mean, if you're going to pick that out, then you also have to give him credit for Udogie. You have to give him credit for Sarr. You have to give him credit for Bentancur. I mean, you can't just decide, okay, let me find the 2 or 3 people that aren't working out. And quite frankly, Emerson, I bet Emerson gets moved on for the same amount of money or more that we bought him for.
Good
so I think, I love you, David. And I appreciate the talking points you're giving us. Galini is a bad one. I will give you that. Galini never was convincing and has proven that he couldn't play. So I don't know who he was paying back with that transfer, that loan deal. I don't know what money laundering was going on to get Galini over to Spurs. I have no idea. I'll give you that there was probably something going on there. But I think I'm with you. He helped revamp and really reintegrate the scouting network. I think we're in much better shape. Again, Italian football may be a shadowy area. I know nothing about it, but I don't think he's necessarily, I think he's maybe a creature of that culture in terms of how they operate in the clubs. Again, I'm not trying to besmirch Italian football. I'm not knowledgeable. It's not a league I follow. But I think overall Spurs are a much better spot because of his tenure and what he's done for us than, he missed on, and even Brian Hill. He's a good player. He's probably not great suited for the Premier League and definitely not for the managers he bought him for. But you know what? If he comes back healthy, he's offering great depth. And again, I don't think we'll take a huge loss on him. He would probably be flipped for a profit. So I think all in all, he's been good for the club.
I also think you're right about the Emerson one, is that even if you don't like Emerson, at the end of the day, he would be sold on for exactly more money. I think almost certifiably more money than what we actually brought him in for. Could you say the same of Kulusevski? Maybe. Probably not of Brian Hill and then of Galini. So the ones I think you put in there, Davo, I would say, yeah, Brian Hill, as much as I defend Brian Hill to a hilt as well, and a part of his PR team and propaganda team, I would concede on that one. I would concede on that one. He hasn't in any way, paid back the fee, or if we even sold him on right now, I don't think he would claim the fee that we originally brought him in for. And then Galini, I just find that one, yes, it wasn't good enough, but he was still alone. So it just feels like, it's definitely a very harsh one to pick out. It's not like we ended up actually paying the money for him. And then the following season, I think Fraser Forster was a far better backup keeper and actually ended up being a better keeper than Hugo on the day. And that's my only mention of Hugo, hopefully today for the rest of the show. I'll stay very well behaved.
No, he's on the run sheet.
Oh, no. Maybe I'll go get a beer during that period. But David Harris, on Dier doing the decent thing by the club and leaving, and then defends Paratici ban from football. Unless I'm wrong or reading this wrong, I feel like I want Dier to leave because I don't think he's good enough, and because I think he is holding us back from getting a better defender than him into the team. And then in Paratici's case, I think Paratici would do us and has served us well, and I would like him back because I think he would continue to serve us well. So I think it's different because it's my opinion. I could be wrong. I mean, other people are welcome to defend Dier, but I think Dier would, not do well if he stayed at Spurs, and is also preventing us from being able to, get a better defender than him at this moment in time. It's not completely his fault. I hear that argument. But with Paratici, I just think no need to sign a new director of football. If Paratici's done a pretty good job, might as well just let his sentence be served and bring him back. I don't know if they're really that related.
I mean, I'm paying homage to Brooklyn today because I've got some nice Brooklyn
Pilsner. There it is.
Pilsner is delicious. Drop this. Jack H, what are you drinking? So you are a connoisseur of fine beers, according to you. Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted you. This is a very small batch pale ale from a place called Saxophal, which is a nice rural community not far from where I am in central North Carolina. It's a lovely pale ale, very refreshing on a hot day like today, and so I'm enjoying it thoroughly.
Juicy or dry, would you say? Juicy or dry?
Sorry, both of you talking at me.
Sorry. Pale ale, would you say it's a juicy pale ale, like sort of, clear?
No, it's a dry. Yeah, it's a dry pale ale.
That's my favorite.
Available from all good Walmarts.
No, won't find it anywhere. In fact, you have to go to a specialty craft brew store to get this one.
Whoa, favorite.
I've upset him now. A crisp $5. We won't sell Emerson for a profit, and that one is attracting a little bit of attention in the comments.
Okay, let me clarify my comments.
How much do we pay for him? Was it
24 million?
25.
Yeah,
surely we can sell him for 30 million right now. He had a good last season. He had a good strong finish to the last season. He's proven to be very solid defensively. There are a lot of teams in particular that he had great games against that were also, some of his best games are actually against the better teams in the Premier League. Come to think of it, Liverpool, Man City, Chelsea, West Ham. So
big game player.
Another club that sells players well would sell him for a profit.
Atletico Madrid, if they were looking for a defensive right back, would easily buy him for 30+ million. They easily would.
I think you more or less get back what you put in for him. I think he's probably about a £25 million right back. You know?
Well, technically, it's a profit because when you amortize down the transfer fee.
Oh Jesus! Where's the straws in the background that you're clutching at? It's like Cheeseroom John has read the run sheet tonight, because the next thing I wanted to discuss was who starts at right back against Arsenal and Liverpool. Obviously, two of the better teams in the Premier League, you would think. Although I hasten to say that about Arsenal. Do you go defensive and play Emerson, or does Porro keep his place, Jack H? Because I think what we've seen with Porro is he's pretty poor defensively, but going forward, he gives you so much.
Yeah, of late, if you actually, Porro was taken a little bit badly on that first goal for Burnley, and we've shown that he's had a little trouble. But Emerson is not necessarily perfect defensively. He struggled a little bit with Brentford, although he's had some, as you guys mentioned, he's had some big games against huge opponents. My feeling is I would play Porro because I believe that our center back pairing is good enough, that Bissouma and Sarr are good enough that we can actually play more of attacking side. I think we should play Porro because I want Liverpool and Arsenal more worried about us going forward. And I think that Emerson, you lose so much with him with the ball at his feet that it actually causes you more problems. I think Porro is going to learn how to build out of the back better. He's just a more gifted technical player. And I think that I think Ange will also play that way, because I think Ange is the type of player who's like, I want you to have to adjust to us. I don't want to adjust to you. That's not my style. I'm going to force the game on you. As opposed to the previous managers who were all about, okay, I just need to be conservative. I need to make sure that I'm not giving up a lot of space. I need to make sure I have good defenders because I'm more worried about the other team's abilities. So, again, that could backfire clearly in a lot of games, but I would go Porro.
Chap.
I agree with a lot of what was said there. I personally would go with Emerson, and that's just because I do lean a bit more defensively, but I actually agree with Jack H. If you were actually going to predict what Ange is going to do, I could see him more likely picking Pedro Porro based off what he just said there, and that Ange is not really the mentality, from what we can tell, is a guy that's going to concede a lot to the opposition. He's going to back his own brand, and he's going to back his own team, and especially with how, Pedro Porro, not only I think is been good at building out from the back, like you say, it's actually more, he's been one of our chief goal creators, I think, whenever he is in the team in general. He takes far more risks than other players do in possession. He's able to actually, hit, passes both deep and in short, spaces, that open up the opposition. He's pretty much just pinpoint with some of those deliveries that he can play over the top or with kind of his own crosses. And if you're looking to kind of create a goal out of nowhere, or have like a world-class sort of kind of delivery come in from somewhere that just kind of unlocks that Arsenal defense, you would rather play Pedro Porro. But also Martinelli is, I think, probably their second best player, maybe one of their best players, I think, for Arsenal. He's one of their best creators, and he's one of the best in the league at just taking on his man one-on-one and creating a lot of problems. And what he's kind of, I think, really good at is when he kind of just gets it into that penalty area, he just seems to be really hard to win off the ball in those positions. He always seems to play a really dangerous sort of kind of cutback or, pass across the 6-yard area that ends up leading to a goal. And in my opinion, in those sort of one-on-one situations, I think Emerson has proven to be a pretty good player and better than Porro. I think Porro is he's getting so much better defensively. He's getting so much better, but he's still a little bit of a liability I think Emerson has shown that he had a good game against Jack Grealish. He's had good games against Sterling. He's had good games against Zaha. So I would think, those would technically mean, he could get that redemption against Martinelli. Redemption time.
I think I'd play Emerson against the Goons, certainly, because it's away. I'd be tempted to put Porro in against Liverpool. I would, because I think going to the Emirates, regardless of how much you hate Arsenal, you have to admit they've got a pretty good first 11, a very good first 11. And I think, you're right, Martinelli will be exploiting any defensive weaknesses in space. And for me, it's as simple as Emerson, he's better defensively. And I think he's going to get the runaround. I think either of them are going to get the runaround to a degree, to be honest.
Hard.
It's going to be a very hard game and not one that I would fancy us to win. But I think we've got a better chance of winning it with Emerson in personally. Let us know what you got in the chat. I know a few of you are not shy of an opinion. I like this opinion. America and beer should never be mentioned in the same sentence.
Come to America and tell me, as I said, I've got 6 microbrews in my hometown here. It's not very big, that are as good as anything I've had in Europe. Don't want to hear it.
Yeah. I mean, I've got lots of microbrews near me, but I'm not banging on about it.
But I struggle to find those that you talk about when I go over. So.
Yeah,
I wish I had the other Jack's microbreweries.
You don't come to the rural locations, Jack.
That's the problem. I'm stuck in London visiting my daughter. I guess I got to get outside. London, I got to get outside of that crappy town they call London.
London is not Britain. Let's be really clear on that.
Then I apologize to the rest of the nation.
Emerson is average, limiting the attacking third, can be good in defence. I think the fans wildly overrated his performance last season. Go with the same lineup depending on the Sheffield United game. King Hoddle's fancying Emerson. Porro, Stuart Austin saying poor defender but a good player and a goal threat. I think that's fair to say. It's interesting.
Yeah,
and this is a fair point.
If you were to predict Ange, though, I actually do think he is going to go with Porro. I think Jack H.
I think he'll go Porro. I think he will. Porro's quicker than Emerson.
Yeah, and the other thing is, you're right about Martinelli. Obviously, he's probably there. He is a dangerous player, but their left back situation in Arsenal ain't great as far as defensively speaking. And I think that I would want Porro attacking that left back area along with whoever he's going to play on the right. And I almost would rather have Emerson in Liverpool just because their left side front to back is much stronger, I think. So I don't know. It's a tough call, but for me, I would play Porro because I think for me, defense is all about effort and experience. And the more you play, the better you get. So for me, I would go Porro unless he's hurt, quite frankly, because I think the drop-off between Porro and Emerson in defense is not as great as the drop-off between Emerson and Porro in attack. So that's my feeling.
I mean, London isn't all a shithole, let's be honest. It's pretty nice in places. But I think the secret of London is like live within commutable distance like I do, and you can still afford a really nice house. And you have all the benefits of living in the countryside. Well, none of the day-to-day shit that goes on in London. Yeah. Okay. Well, it'll be interesting to see who starts. But I think one thing is for certain, we are in a spot of bother because despite all the positivity about Ange Postecoglou's reign so far at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, there is a problem. And that problem isn't Daniel Levy on this one. The problem is Ange has done well and has been nominated for the Manager of the Month award. Now, generally speaking, when you win that award, things go tits up very soon. It happened for Nuno. It happened for Jose. It happened for Conte. I think it happened for Arteta, actually, last season. What in winning that do we, Jack? I mean, let's be honest. It's a poison chalice.
Did it go bad for Arteta? It's hard to remember. I thought they started the season off very strongly.
You didn't win it at the start. It was just before they went on their losing streak.
Okay, good to know. Well, the evidence points towards it not going well. You'd like to think Ange is bulletproof, and none of this sort of stuff would ever phase him or ever
Right, the bollocks,
reach or
mate.
touch him. Exactly, just puts it in the Barbie, and he doesn't think about it. But I don't know. I think does he even deserve it? That's what I'm wondering. Does he actually deserve it? As maybe that's the real question. I think I agree with you. I would be very worried if he did win it. I believe in the superstitions. I always believe in the superstitions, but does he actually deserve to win it is the question. He's had a great month, but has he really been the best one? Maybe it should just go to Guardiola.
Yeah. I mean, Guardiola's won all these games, hasn't he? So surely default position tells you, you should win it. So I should take that. But, Jack Hoyle, are you worried about him winning this? It's terrible. It's cursed.
Absolutely. I voted for Moyes. I mean, I don't want him anywhere near that. And quite frankly, I mean, I think Moyes, they've done very well. I mean,
yeah, he actually probably does.
I think Moyes is as deserving as anyone. And I made sure in every award that a Tottenham player was up for it, I voted for somebody else. I don't want any limelight. I don't want any attention whatsoever on Tottenham. So I mean, I'm not a superstitious person at all. I mean, but I'm a Spurs fan, so I have to cave to the, I mean, all the way back to notions of lasagna gate and things past. You don't want to tempt fate, and so it's like, okay, I don't need Ange meeting. I don't need him. He doesn't want the spotlight. He doesn't need it. So I'm more than happy. I voted for Matoma for Player of the Month. I mean, I don't want.
Yeah, well, player of the month. Madison's up for that.
I don't want any part of Spurs getting any notoriety or attention. Just fly under the radar as long as possible. Of course, we'll see what happens in the big games coming up later this month. If you win those, it's going to be impossible not to be talked about. But for now, I just assume no one with a Spurs jersey or kit or anything gets any sort of recognition. I just want to have them lay low.
Jack, do you feel the same about this? I mean, it's just I do. I am scared. I think if he wins it, we've got some challenging fixtures coming up. It could come back to haunt us.
Yeah, like I said, I sort of feel like I am a superstitious person, so I'd like him not to win it. And I just hope that they give it to somebody, perhaps I would say maybe more deserving. I think Ange has had a terrific month and in no way has done really anything all that wrong. But I do feel like maybe a David Moyes technically would be a more deserving candidate. And I do think a Pep Guardiola would be a more deserving winner as well, because he's won all of his games. Some of them were pretty tough games. He might have had an easier schedule than maybe some other teams have, but he still won them all. And then David Moyes, I would say, had a pretty tough schedule and has, gotten a lot of points out of it. So I just think someone else should win it, even if Ange does deserve it. I don't even know, or does win it. I'm not sure if he even deserves it. I feel like actually another manager deserves it.
Going back to the centre-back situation with Dier and his allotment and all the rest of it, who's our first choice sort of backup centre-backs now, Jack H? Because, does that put Dier in the frame for a slot on the bench, or do you think that Phillips and Dawson is ahead of him?
Well, if you take the squad that traveled to Burnley, so Ashley Phillips took the spot that Gio left when he got hurt at Fulham. So that clearly says that Ashley Phillips is ahead of Dier. The next question is, now that Sanchez is sold, so put Ashley Phillips into Sanchez's spot. So if Gio is still is unable to make the squad, who comes in and fills that spot? Is it Dier, or are they going to go back into the academy and get Alfie Dorrington? I mean, I don't know. It would seem the logical thing that Dyer's moved up at least one spot, but everything I missed the beginning of the show, so I'm not sure what was discussed with the reported meeting between Dier and Levy, who supposedly Dier is looking for understanding what his place is in the squad, which I don't think Ange is the type of person to not be clear about his points of view and what he sees. I don't think any players ever said they didn't get the straight talk from him. So as far as I know, it seems that, Dier is probably behind Davies. Could you play Doggy at left center back? He's a big kid. Emerson at right. I mean, there's all sorts of people. If you really said, okay, Dyer's not not for me. He's too whatever. We can all say what he's not good about doing in the system. You could probably easily come up with 4 or 5 players that are in front of him if one of the center backs goes down. So that goes back to the earlier discussion. I don't know why Dier decided to stay at the club. I really don't understand it. It doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever.
Well, I agree. And something else that doesn't make any sense to me is John giving me abuse from afar. Hi, John. But he's right on this. 141 people watching, only 55 likes. That's a poor ratio. So please, if you're one of the 141 people watching this right now, please do hit the like button. It costs you nothing, means the world to us. We thank you from the bottom of our hearts. And please make sure you subscribe while you're there. Dorrington Jack or Phillips, there's options there, isn't there? I mean, I think both. Dorrington's very highly rated on Football Manager, I'll tell you that much, and Phillips as well. So we've got some good youth players coming through. Is it a surprise to you that we released Sanchez for $9 million payable over 5 years to promote these guys?
It was a bit of a surprise because it looked like he was going to stay, and Ange had more tolerance of Sanchez than he did of Dier, Tanganga, Rodon, or the rest of these guys. It felt like at center back. But maybe his, in my opinion, pretty poor performance on Tuesday night made Ange think slightly different, because it wasn't even the goals that we conceded. I think Sanchez proved that once again, he's not very good on the ball, and he's not very good in possession or good enough for this system. For what we really need. There was a huge drop off between him and Romero, not only just defensively wise, but just in possession. Sanchez really struggles, in my opinion, to play any sort of pass to break the lines of the midfield forward. He usually just reverts to giving it sideways, giving it sort of laterally to someone else, puts us under pressure. And then when we get put under pressure, we don't seem to really get out of it, because he's somebody that kind of struggles within that, kind of context. So I think Ange ended up maybe having second thoughts, sort of showed him the door. And then we ended up, kind of putting more of our faith in Ashley Phillips and Dorrington, who both are, for their age group at least, very good on the ball, very progressive, modern center backs, tall, fast. And again, sort of their best attributes being very good in possession. And that's what we're kind of looking for when it comes to this system. And they probably will make mistakes, and they will probably have, huge signs of nerves and, having to adjust to this sort of speed and pace and, physicality of things. But I still think they're probably better on the ball, both of them, especially Dorrington, I think is much better on the ball than Sanchez is. And Ashley Phillips, from what we're told, is far better on the ball than what Dier and Sanchez is too. So yes, they maybe lack the experience, and they will maybe struggle with that step up a little bit, but they have attributes that Ange is looking for that the other guys kind of don't have.
Top of our shopping list in January, a centre back, do you think?
Is that to me?
Either or.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I mean, Ange was actually public. I think it was the press conference either before or after the Barcelona preseason game. He was asked straight out, does he want another center back in? And he said yes, and he didn't get one. So I had to imagine that that's the number one target. The problem is prices are elevated. That doesn't help when Levy's running transfers. And, where are you shopping for that center back? Are you going back to the Bournemouths of the world, the Fulhams of the world, who at that point could be more concerned about survival than they are, making a profit on a player? So the pool of available of players could be a lot less. Prices could be up, which could mean that, we are going to see one of those horrific sagas that drive me crazy, which is social media going bananas and crushing the club for not paying the money to get the player over the line that may not even really be interested in coming to the club to begin with. So I just, but yes, to answer your question, I have to assume that they're rolling the dice that they can get, what are there, however many games between now and Christmas?
14 games.
Okay. Basically almost one a week, so that they can roll the dice and get there in pretty good shape and then target someone in January. But January windows are not easy. Sorry.
As we know from previous experience. But yeah, look, I mean, it's got to be a forward and a centre back on the shopping list, doesn't it? Probably the centre back more crucial to us, I would say, but we'll see what transpires. It is only 14 games. 14 games ain't that much, one a week. So to keep your players fit, it shouldn't be too difficult, hopefully, unless nothing happens to them. And, thankfully nothing's happened on the international break yet, apart from Romero winning man of the match, which was, I saw Messi saying something like he's the best defender in the world. Jack, you must be happy about that.
Yeah, I love Romero. I was very confused by a lot
the
of the
Paratici signing.
Oh, happens to be one of the other ones. Yeah, that also was another delivery of a gem.
That was missed out of Davo's comment. I don't know how
must have been. And let us also remind ourselves that Davinson Sanchez was given to us by Steve Hitchen in comparison. Yeah. So there you are. And also Joe Rodon. But in the case of Romero, I was very confused by a lot of sort of the slack and sort of, kind of criticism he was given last season. I understand he didn't have a lot of great games, but he's only been here so long. I think he was let down by the other defenders and goalkeeper behind him. And yes, he had some games where he definitely contributed to our own downfall, but he still is by far our best center back in possession and is probably our best defender still in general. I think Mickey van de Ven, of course, has been exceptional and has been an exceptional partner for him. But Romero, in my belief, is going to be one of the best center backs in the world and has all the talents and the capabilities to do it. I was a big Sergio Ramos fan, and I find him to be the kind of regen of a Sergio Ramos, a guy that's very good in possession. That's one of Ramos's, I think, most underrated abilities was how good he was in possession and how he could unlock teams just starting moves on his own, could score goals. But he also had just that crazy sort of aggression about him that just intimidated players and made people not want to play anymore. And, certain games where Ramos just made people feel like, the game just wasn't fun anymore because he just was such an over-aggressive and sometimes over-aggressive player, but it did more times, I think, benefit him and suit him than it really did work against him. And to my belief, Romero probably might not even get nearly as many red cards as Ramos does. He's actually a bit more tactful and a bit, more clever about it than even Ramos was. So I find him to be one of my favorite types of defenders. I love a guy that crunches people and, enjoys, kind of the housery, side of the game. I love Romero.
So Jack, you think that Romero can learn that move that Ramos put on Salah in the CL final?
I think he already knows that move. He's just waiting to use it when he needs to. He definitely already knows that move.
I do love.
He's the Romero. Voldemort. It's like the Voldemorts of defending, and I think Romero is definitely a Voldemort for sure.
I love Romero. I think he's a quality player, and I just think he's class. If he can control the aggressive side of his game, I think we've got a hell of a player there, and you'd back Ange to do that, really, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think the only thing that separates him from being considered one of the three best center backs in the world is all between the ears, because everyone can see he has the physical tools to be as good as you're saying. I think Ramos is a fair comparison. He's got that edge, he's got that bite, he's got that intimidation, but at the same time, he's got the technical ability to affect the game both defensively and offensively. I think, I love that video that went around of him taking out the Ecuadorian forward and then just standing over him, shouting at him. I mean, if he's not playing for your team, you hate it, but when he's playing for your squad, you just love that sort of edge. So yeah, I agree. I think we've got a class player if again he stays focused, and Ange is getting a lot of credit for naming him vice captain, and maybe that did or did not have something to do with how he's played and not had a foul called against him, let alone a card in the first 4 games. Although I think he got away with a hack that was given as a an advantage play that probably would have gotten called had they not retained possession. But other than that, he's been pretty much perfect through 4 games. And if he can stay on the field, stay healthy, and keep the yellows and definitely the red cards off his game, you're right. I mean, he could be transformative for this team and get us from conceding 60 down to conceding in the 40s.
Yeah.
And if we concede in the 40s to no more than 50, this squad will score enough goals to have a very good season.
Before we get ahead of ourselves, though, Messi has also been only playing against MLS defenders, so he also might just be, very impressed easily at this.
You just had to go there. You just had to.
It's a fair point, though, isn't it? Let's be honest.
Well, yeah, only for the last 3 months. Come on. I think he's got enough history of playing against some decent defenders in Spain and on the international circuit that, he's get some credit. I'm sure I stayed off of Twitter. I'm sure that's what was said about those comments. I have no doubt, though.
I'm just happy to see his bodyguard tracking him up and down the pitch like an extra linesman, to be honest. I think that's absolute quality. But yeah, look, we've been going an hour. I think we've covered some good topics, and I appreciate you both being on. So I'm gonna wrap up there. If you haven't already, subscribe, like, share the show. Jack, thanks for joining from Brooklyn.
Thanks for having me. Once again, very well behaved on the Hugo department. I'm very proud of myself in that area. I decided to fill it up.
Hugo, did I? Never got on to
decided to fill it up with as much Emerson appreciation as I could, as well as Romero. It was a good show. I'm glad that Jack H could join us and we could have a bit of a Yank takeover, which is always fun, a bit of a 2-on-1. And you handled yourself well, caller.
The Yankee takeover. Yeah, don't worry, I can take you two down, just like the British have done for most of your history. Jack Coyle.
What?
You enjoyed that. Jack Coyle, thanks for joining us all the way from the
Sorry
States.
for all the technical difficulties I had for the first 20 minutes of the show. I apologize. I don't know what's going on. There's something weird. But I finally, on the 4th device that I found, was able to connect. So who knows? I can't explain it. So anyway, but yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Just relief, really. Just relief that you got on and didn't leave me with just Jack. American beer.
You weren't escaping that dire conversation. Yeah, you're like, you joined us.
If you've got any comments, leave them for us after the show. We'll get back to each one. If you've got any comments about American beer being rubbish, leave them in the comments in the chat, and I will absolutely pass those on to Jack. So until next time, join us again Monday night. And international break's rubbish, isn't it? We can't wait to get back talking about Spurs. So come on, you Spurs.
In the big Ange we trust.
Come on, you Spurs.